Um, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. If people that walk in after that, that's perfectly okay. But just very briefly, maybe we'll begin in prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together the last 9+ weeks as we've walked the Bible timeline through salvation history. Tonight, we look at one of the most spectacular Marian apparitions that you have given to us to strengthen our faith in you through your mother, our mother, Mary. And so tonight, we pray together, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, one other little housekeeping measure. I'm going to take and turn down our music just a tad bit because I don't want it to be distracting, especially for the folks on this side of the room. And I'll pop that back on at the right moment. So tonight we talk about Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico, Mexico City, Mexico. Okay. Let's see if I can get this gizmo running. Or did it turn off on me? All right, if I'm going to have to stand up here, that's going to make it a little bit more difficult. Let's see what happens. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I will start with a quick disclaimer. You know, I have no advanced theological formal training. You guys know that. We talked about that early on in the class, but I do enjoy learning about this stuff and have done as much reading as I possibly can on this. I've utilized those who do have those advanced theological degrees who tell us about Our Lady of Guadalupe. So I'm going to just quickly scroll through. You guys are more than welcome to this. Afterwards, I'm happy to send it out to your parents. I've got over 40 different references that I've used over the last several months to put this together. Okay. So tonight we begin with a simple phrase. This phrase changed the history of the world, the history of our world forever. Quixamo nikan, nika nimanansan. This is the Nahuatl language. This was the language spoken by Juan Diego. When he went to go speak to the bishop of what was then Tenochtitlan, he didn't speak Nahuatl. He had a translator. So that translator would have told the bishop, No estoy yo aquí, que soy tu madre? Which we, speak English, would have known, am I not here? Who am your mother? And so who are we talking, of course, about but Mary? Before we get into the image of Guadalupe itself, we have to start with some background. So the first thing to maybe talk about is Christopher Columbus, of all people. He didn't even go to Mexico City. Why are we going to talk about Christopher Columbus? Well, a Jesuit, Father John Hardin, sums it up. And he tells us it's one thing to say that Columbus discovered America. It's another, or it is something else to realize that he opened the door to the most phenomenal spread of Christianity since the time of St. Paul. There's nothing that could not be truer. You know, when Paul went out to evangelize, you guys know from our timeline class, these were Jews, these were Gentiles, they were following Mosaic law. At least the Jewish people were following Mosaic law. It said, you do not drink blood. Yet here's Paul out there saying, eat, consume the body of Christ, drink the blood of Christ. This was anathema to what the Jewish people believed, and yet he was able to Christianize the entire known world. So too was that door that Christopher Columbus opened in the New World, when you had in the Aztec and the Mesoamerican people a group who was human sacrificing, who some may argue were even demonic. And yet, through the work of those Spanish missionaries, they were able to affect the largest conversion in the history of the world. So we start with Christopher Columbus. Now, Christopher Columbus, just to get ahead of myself just a little bit, we all know Columbus sailed the ocean blue. In what year? 1400? Excellent. Okay, so he leaves on September 8th, 1492, which just happens to be the birthday of Mary. Happy birthday, Mom. Columbus, of course, sails on what three ships? Not the Mayflower. Good one there. The Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. Now, one thing that history does not talk about was that this guy was a third order Franciscan. He was Catholic, not just regular, he was a devout Catholic. Another thing that you probably did not learn in history class was every single night, all 90 of his men aboard the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria would gather on the deck and sing the Salve Regina every single night. He was looking for the Indies. He wasn't looking for America. He was trying to sail around the world. We know that his intent was missionary. He had had correspondence with guys in India along the Silk routes and so forth who were looking for extra missionary priests. He said, look, if I could find this discovery route, subsequent visits, I will bring missionaries. We knew this was his intent. It's not talked about very much in history class, but that's what Christopher Columbus was looking to do. We also know that he made a promise to his men. If we do not reach the New World by October 12th, I will turn around and I will bring you back to Spain. Why October 12th? That was the feast day of Our Lady of the Pillar. Our Lady of the Pillar is a Marian apparition in Spain, okay? As is Our Lady of Guadalupe, which I will get back to in a moment. Now we know that the feast day of Mary, the Mother of God, the Theotokos, right? The God-bearer, the Mother of God, that feast day we celebrate on January 1st. It's a holy day of obligation. That's why we have to go to Mass on New Year. But was that always the case? No. And in fact, I put the wrong date up there. I meant to change that. But on October the 11th, that was the old feast day of Our Lady of the Theotokos, the Mother of God. And then in 1974, Pope Paul VI changed that to New Year's Day. The very next day was October 12th. Why are these days important? Well, the night of October the 11th, they had still not sighted land. There were probably some people getting a little nervous. Hey, maybe we're not going to make this happen. We're going to have to turn around, but not Christopher Columbus. He went on deck, sang the Salve Regina, said his evening prayers, and that night, land was spotted. The next morning, on the feast day of Our Lady of the Pillar, they finally land in the Americas. Now, why do we even talk about Our Lady of the Pillar? Well, only because it involves Columbus, and by virtue, Columbus involves discovering the New World, and by virtue of that, Our Lady of Guadalupe. To speak about Our Lady of the Pillar, we go all the way back to biblical times. St. James, you guys know St. James. In the Bible, Christ talks about Peter, James, and John, right? Peter, James, and John. Well, this is St. James. And in 40 AD, he had headed west. He was evangelizing the Iberian Peninsula, the area that today we call Spain, Portugal, and he was downcast. He was having a lot of difficulty converting the people, and he started to doubt himself. And that was the first recorded Marian apparition. It is said that the angels carried Mary to the top of the pillar, where then she told St. James, "Do not despair. These people will do great things for me." This happened near Zaragoza. This is an aside. Zaragoza is simply a different way of saying Caesar Augustus. So you know this was part of the Roman Empire. But wait, Our Lady of Guadalupe, wait. Well, we were talking about Mexico. What is this stuff about Spain and Extremadura, Spain? Is there another Our Lady of Guadalupe? Well, there is. So you guys probably are familiar. St. Luke, the gospel writer, the evangelist, was an avid artist. He designed a number of images as well as statues. And he was one who had carved an image of Our Lady and the infant Jesus. It was one of the Black Madonnas, if you're familiar with the Black Madonnas. And there she is. So from the Holy Land, she makes her way to Rome. Why? Well, because all roads lead to Rome, right? So she ended up in the Vatican collection, where then Pope St. Gregory the Great, a number of centuries later, the late 400s, early 500s, decides to give this statue in thanksgiving to St. Leander of Seville. That's important. Seville is in southern Spain. Okay, why was he given this? Well, because of St. Leander's victory in converting the Visigoths of the Iberian Peninsula. So that statue now has made its way from the Holy Land to Rome and now to Spain. You guys from my church history class, you know what happens in the the early 700s. That's the time of the Muslim invasion, the Moor conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. As they cross over near the Strait of Gibraltar and they're going into the Iberian Peninsula, now the Christians are fearing because the Moors are destroying any and everything which is Catholic. So there's a couple of priests who take this statue and flee northward towards Extremadura. Okay, so this is where they're headed. And when they feel like, okay, we're safe, they're not going to get us right here, they decide, we are going to bury this statue. They put it into a strong box, along with a detailed description. Hey, it came from St. Luke. We're going to hide this because we don't want it desecrated by the Moors as they're invading. And they had hoped to return there someday or send somebody else back there someday to locate and to bring this back out so it can be displayed once again in one of the churches. Now, that doesn't happen. These guys die off. And the location of the statue is lost forever. 600 years later, a herdsman, Gil Cordero, has lost a cow. He's a herdsman. Now, think about this and how this sounds when we think about the gospel of the lost lamb and how Christ left the herd to seek out that one lamb. Here we have Gil Cordero, a herdsman who's lost one of his cows and leaves the flock in search of his missing cow. He finds the cow. It's laying down on the ground. He thinks the cow is dead. He approaches the cow because he wants to skin it, because if I can't sell the meat, I'll sell the hide. I can get some money from this cow for the leather. And there's another Marian apparition. And she tells Gil, you need to go back to the town and have the priest come to this location and dig. And when you find what I am looking for, when you find what I'm telling you to look for, build a church at this spot. So he does. He goes back to the priests, and the priests come out and they dig the hole, and they find this lockbox, this strong box, open it up, and there's the statue. 600 years later. And the church is built right there at Extremadura, Spain. They give this statue the name Our Lady of Guadalupe. Why? Because the Guadalupe River runs right nearby to this area. And so they build their church. It becomes a massive structure. Now, when Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand get married, they're very devout Catholics, and they like going to the shrine. They visit it frequently. In fact, it's one of Christopher Columbus's favorite shrines to visit. He goes to visit the king and queen at the shrine. And I want to say it was about 1487 was when he first approached the royalty asking for a commission for the money to cross the Atlantic, to cross the Great Pond, and to establish a route to the Indies, right? But they told him, no, I can't do this. Why? Because we are still fighting a war. 600 years in the making, since the Moors invaded in the 700s, they are still in our country. We are making headway, but we've got to finish this war before we start spending money on exploring. So they are married in 1469. I told you 1487. Look, I was 1 year off. 1486, Columbus comes and he asks for that commission. Now, they're unable to do this until 1492. Why? January the 2nd, 1492, the final battle is waged. It's at Granada, Spain, and the Muslims, the Moors, are pushed out of out of the Iberian Peninsula for good. And so they give him his commission. And as you know, September 8th, he sets sail on the birthday of Mary. He finds land on October 11th and lands on October 12th. Now, we talked about the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. How does that fit in with Our Lady of Guadalupe? Well, what do these names mean? The Nina is girl. How does Mary appear on the image or the tilma of Juan Diego, but as a young girl, 15, 16 years old? The Pinta paints. This is a divine image painted by the hand of God. And the Santa Maria, Saint Mary. What is the image that we're talking about tonight? But the image of Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now, okay, let's switch gears for just a second. We've been talking a lot about Columbus, about the Spanish. Let's go to the other side of the pond now and talk about the Aztecs. Okay. Now, the Aztecs were a nomadic people. They were wandering throughout Mesoamerica. And there was an old legend within their religion that they would settle, but not until they found an eagle consuming a snake. So they are wandering around Mesoamerica, and they come to a lake. It's Lake Texcoco. When they reach Lake Texcoco, they look out to an island in the middle of the lake, and they see exactly that. They see an eagle, which is consuming a snake, standing upon a cactus bush. And they say, well, that legend from Quetzalcoatl must be true. This is where we are to settle. And they did. But it was an island. Oh, before I get to that far, this is the influence today. So this today is the flag of Mexico. Notice that it still has the eagle consuming the snake on the cactus bush. Through all of these centuries, it hasn't changed, and that cultural aspect of Mexico today remains. Okay, so this is Tenochtitlan. Okay? The Aztecs have found Lake Texcoco, they found Tenochtitlan, and in the middle of the Tenochtitlan, they found the eagle consuming the snake on the cactus bush. So this is where they set up their city. Now, as the city grew, needless to say, this is an island, so it's difficult to get to. So right off, they built 3 causeways to their island. Now, the one that you see coming out towards you on the bottom is actually headed west. So this is not aligned like north, south, east, west. It's kind of turned to the side. This one actually heads west. That today is Cordoba Street. If you visit Mexico City today and you go down Cordoba Street, that was the ancient Aztec causeway which led to the island of Tenochtitlan. Our story takes us to Tepeyac Hill. So the one which heads out to the left of your screen is actually headed north. That causeway led to Tepeyac Hill, where Juan Diego would come in for his catechetical teaching. One neat thing, if you look at that island, it doesn't look like one island, does it? It looks like a lot of small islands, almost like maybe Venice, Italy. Because as they grew and they needed more food, they would build these barges out in the middle of the lake, and they would plant their crops. And as the crops would grow and sediment would drop down, eventually the lake bottoms would reach those little barges, and they would literally become islands, and that was where they would grow their food. At its peak, the Aztec Empire encompassed a total of about 12 million people. This is about the entire stretch of the Aztec Empire. And of course, Tenochtitlan is right there at the lake in the center, and I have it circled there just for reference. Now, if you want to know what it looks like today, in the bottom right-hand corner there where you see the flag of Mexico, that today is called the Zocalo. And it's kind of like Jackson Square. Okay, so if you had to like compare it to something that you're familiar with, that's Jackson Square. Only instead of having a statue in the middle, they've got their flag in the middle. The church that you see in the background, parts of it were actually built with the remnant of their temple. So bottom left-hand corner is the Templo Mayor, which was their biggest, tallest temple. There they worshipped to 2 different gods, the sun god and to the water god. The sun god was Huitzilopochtli, and the water god was Tlaloc. Okay, so to the left, if you look at the center temple in the background, there's two little like bumps at the top there. The one on the left was to Tlaloc, and the one on the right was to Vidzimikushli. Okay. This was a human sacrificing group of individuals. Okay, they practiced human sacrifice. They said that they would have to feed their gods in order to maintain their society. If they did not do this, then their society might die off. And there were anywhere throughout the entire Aztec community of anywhere from 50,000 up to 250,000 people sacrificed each and every year. That central temple that I was talking about, the Templo Mayor, that particular temple, when it was completed and dedicated, they sacrificed 80,000 people in 4 days in commemoration of their new temple. An Aztec priest could harvest a beating human heart in 15 seconds. They would use an obsidian knife like the one you see on the right. You would know that sacrifice was going on because snakeskin drums would start beating, and they would continue to beat as long as the sacrifice was going on. When they'd run low on people to sacrifice, they would have these staged wars. They called them the flower wars. And they would set up these wars with neighboring communities in the Lake Texcoco area, and they would go on and pretend to fight until they had captured enough people to satisfy the next human sacrifice. So that is the world that the Spanish were getting ready to find when they landed in what is today Mexico. If I say the name Montezuma, does everybody at least have a familiarity with the name Montezuma? Okay, so Montezuma was the ruler of the Aztecs. The guy that you see on the far left is actually Montezuma II. Okay, he had a sister, and the sister told her brother, the leader of the Aztecs, of this frightening dream that she had had. She dreamt that large canoes, larger than I had ever seen before, were getting ready to land. There were massive pegs sticking out of these canoes, and there was a sail, there was a cloth attached to the pegs. And on that cloth was an emblem that I've never seen before. And you can see on the right-hand side what Montezuma's sister might have been describing. Now, this frightened Montezuma. Why? Because he knew of an old Aztec legend that Quetzalcoatl was, in urban legend, supposed to come back. He was once a part of the Aztecs, and he didn't fit into the culture. He was banned from the culture, and he left from Veracruz, Mexico, or Veracruz, what was to become Mexico. But it was said that if they did not do as they were supposed to do, then Quetzalcoatl will come back, and he will conquer the Aztec rulers to retake rightful reign of the Aztecs. And so when Montezuma hears this, he's like, oh man, that's Quetzalcoatl. I got to do something, man. He's coming back. And that's Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, when he's shown as a deity. Otherwise, he was described as an Aztec with lighter skin, a beard, and who wore black. Now that is important. Why? Hernan Cortez. Hernan Cortez, who's going throughout the Caribbean, lands at none other than Veracruz, Mexico. It happened to be Good Friday. Sound familiar, guys? We're coming up on Good Friday now. April 22nd, 1519. And he lands at Veracruz, Mexico. Because it is Good Friday, he's wearing black. He's lighter skinned than the Aztecs. And he was a bearded man. Sounds a lot like Quetzalcoatl. When he lands, word goes back to Tenochtitlan, to Montezuma, that they believe Quetzalcoatl may have landed. So Montezuma goes into panic mode. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, man, we've been doing everything we're supposed to do. Why is he coming back now? I don't want to give up my power. So Hernan Cortez begins making his way towards Tenochtitlan. Along the way, he's befriending some of these other Aztecs that are outside of the Lake Texcoco area. They're pointing him in the right direction. He makes it to Cholula, Mexico, and he encounters human sacrifice. He's disgusted by this. He destroys the temple. So now, word gets back to Montezuma. Oh, wow. Not only is he here, he's begun conquering. So now Montezuma is really going into panic mode. Those neighboring tribes take him to the causeway of Tenochtitlan, and they enter and they bring him to Montezuma. And you'd think, oh man, there's about to be a fight. But there wasn't. Instead, he tried to befriend what he thought was Quetzalcoatl. He offered him food and riches and, make yourself at home, because he didn't want this guy to take over. And then he offered him, big mistake, 5 human sacrifices. This disgusted Hernan Cortez. And at that point, he takes Montezuma prisoner, and fighting breaks out. You would think this is the point where the Spanish, take over Tenochtitlan, but they don't. They're pushed out. And for the next 2 years, they start building their forces with the neighboring groups until 1521. So now we're 10 years before the image of Juan Diego, or the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, appears on Juan Diego's tilma. 10 years out. This is the fall of Tenochtitlan. So Hernan Cortez returns. Montezuma II is killed. In place of Montezuma, Hernan Cortez is made the governor of Tenochtitlan. He brings in the gentleman on your right, Juan Zumárraga, and he is made the bishop of the area. He has a very difficult job. He has 10 Franciscans who have accompanied him to this new land. And they are charged with Christianizing this barbaric, demonic, human sacrificing culture of the Aztecs. They don't do a very good job. They're converting some people, but not a whole lot. The Aztecs who do convert, their lives are at risk. Why? Because the Aztecs that did not convert think that these guys are basically selling out. So let's kill them. Even the Spanish were committing atrocities against the Aztecs. Why? Well, when they were trying to communicate, they'd say, well, we come from Christ Jesus. We come from the Lord. Where do you come from? And they'd say from Quetzalcoatl, the serpent god. Oh, these guys are Christian. They think, okay, if he comes from a serpent, they must be from the devil. Therefore, they must not have a soul. Therefore, it's okay to kill them. And they did, in massive numbers. This is what Juan Zumárraga was up against. And he's trying to stop this. It's not getting better. There was even an attempt on Juan Zumárraga's life as the bishop. Finally, he writes a letter to Charles V, the Spanish king, and he says, unless there is divine intervention, we will lose this land. I've done all I can do. We're not going to win these people over. And then privately, he prays a prayer asking for a miracle. He is from an area of Spain known as Seville, nearby to Extremadura. He knows Our Lady of Guadalupe front, back, and upside down. He lives where the Spanish Our Lady of Guadalupe, near the river Guadalupe, runs. He knows what a Castilian rose is. That was his favorite flower. If you've gotten a piece of cake to eat, the flowers that you see on the cake are Castilian roses. That is what Juan Zumárraga prayed privately for. He asked for just a single rose as a sign that I am supposed to be here, that this is the right thing to do, that we should not be abandoning what we're doing here in the New World. Our next character is our central character, Juan Diego. Okay. Now, Juan Diego is from, see if I can pronounce this, Cuautitlan, okay? Cuautitlan, I'm sorry. So in the upper left-hand corner of the left-hand map is Cuautitlan. And you can see that's quite a distance away from Tenochtitlan. He and his wife, Maria Lucia, were early converts to Catholicism. When the Franciscans first arrived, they were some of the first to be baptized. They were married in the Catholic Church. Unfortunately, she dies not long after they are married. So Maria Lucia does not live to see the miracle. And Juan Diego leaves Cuautitlan and he moves to Pultac. He has an uncle there, Juan Bernardino. So he goes to live with his uncle Juan Bernardino. And each Saturday, he would walk 7 miles, 4 hours to reach Tlatelolco. So Tlatelolco is not on the map on your left. I could not find a map that had them both. On the right-hand side, you see the island of Tlatelolco. What happened was, as these islands continued to expand, the island of Tenochtitlan overcame the island of Tlatelolco to where they became one. Okay, but they were still on that northern causeway leading to Tepeyac. So each Saturday, Juan Diego would leave Tepotec, and he would make that 7-mile, 4-hour journey past Tepeyac onto the causeway to the island of Tlatelolco, where he would go to Mass and he would receive catechism in his native Nahuatl tongue. He did not speak Spanish. He spoke Nahuatl, and that was only available to him on Saturdays. December 9th, 1531. It's been 10 years now since Juan Zumárraga was first put in charge. He's at his wit's end. He's written the king. He's prayed privately for a miracle. And that morning, Juan Diego is walking from Tepotec towards Tlatelolco and crossing over Tepeyac Hill when he hears a voice. Juanito, Juanito. He hears singing. He said it was the most beautiful music he had ever heard. And then there's silence. And he goes looking for the voice that was calling him. He finds a young girl who then tells him, "Listen, my dearest and youngest son Juan, where are you going?" And so he tells the lady, he says, "Well, I'm headed to Tepotec. I go every Saturday. That's my catechism, my Mass." And the young girl tells him, "No, know for sure, my dearest and youngest son, that I am the perfect ever Virgin Holy Mary, the mother of the great God of truth who gives us life, the inventor and creator of people, the owner and Lord of what is around us and what is touching us or very close to us, the owner and Lord of the sky, the owner of the earth. And I want very much that they build my sacred little house here." Juan Diego does not know how to respond. There's a young girl who's calling him out personally, asking him to go to the bishop and deliver a message. He's faithful to this Catholic faith that he's been baptized into and that he's learning about. So he continues his journey. He gets to Tepotec and he reaches Juan Zumárraga and asks for an audience with the bishop. They think it's a little bit odd. Who is this guy? He doesn't even speak the language. Why does he want to see the bishop? But okay, I'll ask him. So Juan Zumárraga receives him. And through a translator, Juan Gonzalez, he tells the bishop, "I was out at Tepeyac, and I heard these birds singing, and I heard the flowers singing, and this girl appeared to me, and she said she wants a sacred house, a church built at Tepeyac." Juan Zumárraga doesn't know what to say. He's got bigger fish to fry. He's got Aztecs killing Spanish, killing Aztecs, trying to kill him. And they want me to spend money to go build a church? Okay. I tell you what I'd like for you to do is to come back, and I will listen intently to what you have to say. But now's not the time. So Juan Diego leaves, and he's despondent. He's headed back home. 4-hour journey, 7 miles. And when he reaches Tepeyac Hill, Mary is there. She looks at him and he says, "I tried." The bishop didn't want to do this. He says, "Send somebody who's rich, somebody who's noble, somebody who is somebody. I'm a poor peasant." He doesn't want to listen to me. And Mary tells him, "Listen, my youngest and dearest son, know for sure that I have no lack of servants, of messengers, to whom I can give the task of carrying my breath, my word, so that they will carry out my will. But it is very necessary that you personally go and plead that my wish, my will become a reality, be carried out through your intercession. And I beg you, my youngest and earnest son, and I order you strictly to go again tomorrow, to go and see the bishop. And in my name, make him know, make him hear my wish, my will, so that he will bring into being, he will build my house of God that I am asking him for. And carefully tell him again how I, personally, the ever-Virgin Holy Mary, I, who am the Mother of God, am sending you. So Juan agrees and heads home for the night. The next day, he gets up, and just as Mary asked, he begins his journey. He begins heading back 7 miles, 4 hours, past Tepeyac and into Tlatelolco, where he would then go to see the bishop and ask once again that the house be built, the church be built at Tepeyac Hill. This time the guards are a little more reluctant to let him in to see Juan Zamora. Aren't you the guy who was here yesterday? Man, that the bishop was done with you. You don't need to see him again. But Juan Diego presses on. No, I have to see the bishop. So finally, they give him, and they allow him an audience with the bishop. Juan pleads his case. He begs, he pleads, please. The lady said it has to be done. It has to be me. I have to tell you. Please, build this house that she's asking for. Juan Zamora consults with some of his assistants. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Like, well, he's known within his community. He's a just man. He's an upright, upstanding man. But, I mean, we don't know much else about him. So Juan Zamora, the bishop, sends 2 of his assistants to follow Juan Diego back to his house. He thought, maybe it's one of our guys. Maybe it's one of ours who are trying to get a church built in his neighborhood. Let's see where he goes. Let's see what happens. And they have 2 guys follow him. So they head out onto the causeway. And once again, the causeway to Tepeyac from that map is off to the left. It's actually northerly headed. So they're following him down the causeway. They get to the other side. He reaches Tepeyac Hill. He begins to climb, and they lose him. How do they lose him? There's no trees. There's no rocks. What is this guy doing? Is he hiding from us? Did he know that we were following him? Where'd he go? And so they begin to suspect Juan Diego might be practicing sorcery or some sort of magic, that he's doing some sort of trickery to hide from the assistance of the Bishop Zamora. So this makes them angry. They turn around, they head back to Tenochtitlan, to Tlatelolco, and they go to Bishop Zamora and they say, we don't know what's going on. This guy, he just disappeared. We think he's practicing some sort of sorcery. You shouldn't believe him. Don't believe a word he says. And on top of that, that place that he kept talking about where he wants the church built, it's Tepeyac. There used to be a temple there. It was one of the Aztec temples to Coatlicue, Tenochtitlan. I bet you money he just wants you to build a church there so that they can worship their Aztec gods at Tepeyac Hill. So now Zamora is a little bit angry and very disbelieving of anything that Juan Diego might say. Meanwhile, Juan Diego did make it to Tepeyac Hill, and the other guys were lost. And after they were lost, Mary appears. This is the 3rd apparition. It's now December 10th, 1531. And Juan Diego tells Mary, look, the bishop, he heard what I had to say, but he wants a sign. He's asking for a sign. Can you give him a sign? Mary responds. She says, that's fine. My dear son, you will come back here tomorrow so that you may take the bishop the sign that he's asked for you. With this, he will believe you. And he will no longer have any doubts about all this. And he will no longer be suspicious of you. And know, my dear son, That will reward your care and your work and fatigue and that you have put into this for me. So go now, and I will be waiting for you here tomorrow. Juan Diego's relieved. She said she'd give him a sign, thank goodness. And he heads home. When he reaches Tepoltec, he finds that his uncle, Juan Bernardino, is now sick. He has a fever. He doesn't know what to do. His uncle doesn't look too good. I say, okay, we'll sleep on it for tonight. We'll see what we can do tomorrow. The next day, when Juan Diego should have been heading back to Tepeyac Hill to meet Mary, to get the sign that's going to prove to the bishop once and for all, this is real. That is Mary. It is the Virgin Mother of God who's saying to build this church at Tepeyac Hill. And instead, he's busy trying to save his uncle's life. His uncle's fever has gotten worse. He goes running out to the local Aztec culture and brings in the shaman, the medicine man. Please do something. My uncle is dying. They come in. They do the Aztec cleansing. They do the herbs. Some of the herbs probably actually work. I mean, some of our medicines come from herbs and so forth. But the shaman comes to do his thing, but it's not working. Towards the end of the day, Uncle Bernardino is getting worse and worse. And the Aztec shaman says, rejoice, Juan Diego, rejoice and be glad. For the sun god, Huitzilopochtli, has your uncle's soul in his grasp. You see, if you died of a fever, Aztec culture dictated that you were going to the sun god. If you drowned, you were going to the water god. So that was associated with your cause of death. And because he had a fever, the shaman believed he was headed for Huitzilopochtli, the sun god. The shaman leaves, and Juan Bernardino tells his nephew, Juan Diego, look, we've converted. We're Catholic now. I need a priest. I need for you to go to Tlatelolco tomorrow. I need you to bring the priest here so he can hear my last confession, so I can receive the sacrament before I die. So the next day, Juan does as his uncle asks, and he starts that 7-mile, 4-hour journey to Tlatelolco to bring back the priest to hear his confession. As he's approaching Tepeyac Hill, he remembers, oh, heck, I was supposed to meet the lady yesterday. I forgot all about it. He's embarrassed. He doesn't know what to do. So instead of going his usual route, he goes around the mountain the other way. He doesn't realize this is Mary we're dealing with. She just goes to the other side. And she meets him there. And this is where Mary tells him those famous words that have changed history forever. She comes down to him and she says, what's happening? Youngest and dearest of all my sons, where are you going? Where are you headed for? And he says, my lady, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot my uncle. He has a fever. He's dying. He's asked me to go get the priest from Tlatelolco. I promise I will come back. I will get the sign that you've promised to give me, but I have to go. I have to take care of my uncle. He's dying. This may be his last chance for confession, his last chance to receive the sacraments. Please forgive me. I will come back, I promise. And Mary tells him, listen, put it into your heart, my dearest and youngest son, that the thing that frightened you, the thing that afflicted you is nothing. Do not let it disturb you. Do not fear the sickness, nor any other sickness, nor any other sharp or hurtful thing. Am I not here, who am your mother? Are you not under my shadow and protection? Am I not the source of all your joy? Are you not in the hollow of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Do you need something more? Let nothing else worry you, disturb you. Do not let your uncle's illness pressure you with grief, because he will not die of it now. You may be certain that he is already well. Juan Diego listens. He says, okay, you got me. I'm ready. If you have the sign, I'll take it to the bishop. And Mary responds, saying, go up, my dearest son, to the top of the hill, to Tepeyac Hill. to where you saw me and what I told you to do. There you will see that there are different kinds of flowers. Cut them, gather them, put them all together. Come down here, bring them to me into my presence. Juan Diego is faithful. He believes, and so he does what Mary asks. But he's been crossing that hill every day for the last 3 days. He knows there's nothing up there. It's rocky, it's barren, it's cold, it's the middle of winter. There's frost. There's no flowers. But okay, you told me to do it, I will do it. And so he does. He goes up to the top of Tepeyac Hill, and he finds the most beautiful flowers that he has ever seen. He gathers them up, he puts them into his tilma, he crosses his arms tight, and he starts the journey from Tepeyac Hill down to Tlatelolco, where he then requests an audience with the bishop again. And guess what? They're not happy with him. Those guards who had thought that they were tricked by him, like, yeah, right, we're going to let you see the bishop again, huh? They make him sit and wait for hours. He's sitting there holding his tilma tight. And they start seeing little flowers poking out from the sides. And they start, oh, what do you have there, Juan Diego? What is that? Let me see. And they reach out for it. They reach for the flower. And their fingers go right through it. They try 3 times to grab the flower. And it was as if it was not even there. Now they're spooked. They run inside to the bishop. Look, that guy is here again. Something is going on. You have got to see him. So they let him in. They bring him in to see Juan Zumarraga, the bishop. And at that point, Juan takes his tilma and he releases it, allowing the tilma to fall. And with it, all of the roses that he had never seen before. But the bishop had. Those Castilian roses had never grown in the Americas before. Those roses were native to Castile, Spain. Juan Zumarraga is from Castile, Spain. Mary actually arranges the flowers in his tilma too. But when Juan Zumarraga looks, he's not looking at the flowers, he's not looking at the ground. And Juan Diego's looking down like, what's going on? You're not even looking at what I brought you. And so he looks down, and on his own tilma has appeared the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The bishop recognizes this as a miracle. He immediately takes the tilma, hangs it, displays it, asks Juan, when did this happen? How did this happen? Tell me more. And he says, but wait, before I tell you anything else, my uncle is very sick. He's deathly ill. He has a fever. Our Lady said that he would be better, but I just don't know it. I need help. Can you get somebody? He says, don't worry. And he sends 2 assistants out to Chapultepec. They bring Juan Bernardino back, and they ask him a question. What happened? You're well. You're not sick any longer. Your fever's gone. When did this happen? How did this happen? He tells them exactly what had happened. And it turns out that at the same time that Juan Diego was gathering these flowers, listening to Mary saying, am I not here, who am your mother? She was bilocating and was at the home of Juan Bernardino and healing him. She told him, you will not die from this fever. You will be healed. She also tells him, I wish to be known as the Lady of Guadalupe. Now, to Juan Bernardino, it would have sounded familiar because there was an Aztec word and Nahuatl word, which was Guadalupe. Now, get this. What does Guadalupe mean in Nahuatl? She who crushes the head of the serpent. Sound familiar? Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. The proto-evangelium. She who would crush the serpent's head. So he tells the bishop, Juan Zumarraga, Our Lady of Guadalupe. And he doesn't hear Guadalupe. He hears Guadalupe. Because in Spain, where he came from, runs the river Guadalupe, is this magnificent, awesome, massive shrine to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And she became known from that day forward as Our Lady of Guadalupe. They rush to Tepeyac Hill. They begin building the church that Mary asked to be built at the peak of Tepeyac Hill. It takes about 2 weeks. It was December 12th, 1531. What is 2 weeks later? Christmas. And the first church is completed, and they're celebrating, they're singing, they're dancing, there's music. What happens on New Year's when people are celebrating? Firing off guns into the air. These guys didn't have that. They had bows and arrows, and they're firing celebratory bows and arrows off into the air. One of the dancers gets hit in the neck, goes through his neck, and he dies. They bring him to one's Mater, and he brings him to the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe and press him against the image. And he's brought back to life again. And it's the first miracle of the tilma of Juan Diego, the day that the first church is completed. Word begins to spread. People are coming from all over to see the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Within 10 years, 9 million people convert. It is the single largest conversion to Catholicism in the history of mankind. At the same time that this was going on, Martin Luther was in Germany, starting the Protestant Reformation. 5 million people left the Catholic Church. It's almost like Mary was choosing this day, this time, to show that no matter what's going on in Europe, we will be successful. We will succeed. 9 million people convert. So how did this happen? How did these people abandon their faith? They were practicing human sacrifice for centuries. Why? Why would they abandon this just like that? Unless maybe there was more to it. Because when you look at the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I have, an image right here, you guys can kind of see, it looks pretty straightforward, right? It's Mary, okay, she's got some rays coming out, starry-looking robe. But what's so special about this image? The Aztecs and the Nahuatl did not have an alphanumeric language. They didn't say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They didn't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It was more like the Egyptians. It was more like the pictographs. They had pictures which represented things. And it's possible then that a message to the Aztecs was almost built in to the image of Guadalupe, leading 9 million people to convert within 10 years. So let's talk about that. I've mentioned Huitzilopochtli a few times. If you look at the bottom left corner of your screen, that is a representation of the sun god Huitzilopochtli. You'll notice that he is the circular face in the center of that stone, and on all 4 sides of him are these 4 square blocks, these 4 chambers, if you will. He was the sun god. There was nobody more powerful than Huitzilopochtli. When they sacrificed to the sun god and to the moon god and to the water god. On the upper right-hand corner, you see the Quetzalcoatl, eagle's vase. Notice that the eyes around the eagle have sunbeams coming out of them. Why? Because the eagle could fly higher and farther than any other animal. It was more revered than any other animal. Why? Because it could get closer to the sun god, their central deity, Huitzilopochtli. And the eagle could get closer than anybody. If you notice behind Quetzalcoatl in the body, there's a recess behind the neck. That is where the beating heart would have been placed, that the eagle would have brought to the god to feed the sun god. The moon god, Quatlique, or also known as Tonantzin. Less commonly, you'll see Tetoe'enan, but most commonly Quatlique and Tonantzin. When represented as a statue, you'll notice the statue looks straight on at you, and you'll notice the belt. That's important. Remember that belt that's around the waist of Quatlique. When represented as a circle, you'll notice that Quatlique is both dismembered and beheaded, and that was because she was not only the moon god, but the moon goes through phases. So that represented the different phases of the moon. Now let's look at the image, and how could the Aztecs have interpreted that as something which was worthy of leaving centuries-old religion for this foreigner's faith? Now, for the Spanish, it was very straightforward. Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. A great sign appeared in the sky. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. You see the sun behind her and the moon underneath her. But do you see the crown of 12 stars? Hold that thought. We'll come back to that. Now, to the Aztecs, if the sun god is the most powerful, notice Mary is in front of their sun god. So she must be more powerful than their sun god. Mary is on top of their moon god. So she must be more powerful than their moon god. Maybe we should embrace this faith after all. Let's go back to that belt. Remember, Coatlicue has this belt. It's made from serpents, kind of a throwback to Quetzalcoatl. Okay, so that was that serpent god when formed in that type of description, Quetzalcoatl. Now, Mary is also wearing that belt. What does that symbolize? Well, in the Aztec culture, that belt was a sign of fertility. That sign was of pregnancy. So to the Aztecs, when they saw Mary wearing that black belt, the only time an Aztec woman would wear that black belt was when she was pregnant. It signified that she was carrying a child. But in the Aztec culture, before you got married, you would wear your hair down and parted down the center. Once you got married, you would braid your hair up. You wouldn't wear it the way the image displays it. So how then did the Aztecs look at these two things, but as a pregnant virgin? Sound familiar? The Spanish would have seen that immediately. Mary. If we look at the pyramids, okay, why were the pyramids built where they were? Well, the one at Templo Mayor, that was on Tenochtitlan, was simply built there because it was an island. But if we go a little further out, it'll come to me in a second. There was a natural cavern in the ground, and that cavern had 4 chambers in it. Okay? Those 4 chambers represented the 4 elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. It also represented the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. And in the center of those 4 chambers would have been divinity. It would have been the most divine place, like heaven on earth. And so they chose to build their pyramid to the most powerful god, to the sun god, on top of those chambers. Teotihuacan. That was where that was at. Sorry, I had a brain fart for a second. Teotihuacan. And that was where that naturally occurring cavern was located. And in the center, of course, divinity. So that is why they built their temple at Teotihuacan. And actually, that was built before the Aztecs, but that was why that one was built there. Okay. If we look at the robe of Mary, the robe has a number of different flowers on it, but there is only one of the quinquats flower, the Nahuli Olan, which was a jasmine flower, which had 4 petals, 4 chambers, surrounded by a circle. In the center is divinity. That one flower, if you can see it on the image to the right of the TV, is just over the womb of Mary, which told the Aztecs that whatever was behind that flower, whatever she is, whoever she is pregnant with, is divine. So yes, she is greater than our sun god because she is in front of our sun god. She is greater than our moon god because she is on top of the moon. But she is not the greatest of all. Why? Because her head is bowed, as if in prayer. She's not looking directly at us like Coatlicue did. She's looking down in prayer. Why? Because there is one greater than her. Who could possibly be greater than her if she's greater than our sun god, greater than our moon god? Well, there's your answer. She was carrying in her womb one who was more divine, more great than she. So again, this is Huitzilopochtli. You can see him again up close in color. The divinity in the center, the 4 chambers surrounding that, and again, the Nahuli Olan, or the quinquats flower, to the left. That is why and how this image told a story to the Aztecs that it was okay to to embrace this faith. What about the robe itself? The robe is this bluish green sort of hue to it. Well, nobody would have worn that unless they were divine, unless they were of royal nature. In the image itself, take a look, and it's this area right here. Okay, so to the image in the right, you can kind of see it right there. But it's almost as if a crucifix is hidden inside of the image. On her left arm, the original picture is to the left, and I put the yellow box around it. The picture in the center is just blown up, nothing more. The picture to the right, I put a watermark over it to help your eyes to see what is hidden there in the left arm. When Mary appears, she appears as mestiza. She's not Aztec, her skin tone was too light. She's not Spanish, her skin tone is too dark. She's mestiza, a combination of the two cultures. If we look at the brooch, that was the only thing that was not Aztec. That was 100% Christian. But it told the Aztecs, it's okay. If she believes this, and she's more powerful than our sun god, more powerful than our moon god, and she displays this image, then it's okay to believe. Because what she carries must be truth. The angel beneath her, no one was carried in Aztec culture unless they were divine, unless they were royalty. The fact that the angel is carrying her means she must be divine. She must be royal. Not only that, but look at his hands. He carries one with the mantle, one with the robe, one symbolizing the sky, the stars, where she is divine from the stars, one symbolizing the robe, the earth, the flowers of the earth, where she is divine in the earth. So the Spanish would have seen this as the queen of heaven and earth. Not only that, but he's a winged angel, and he has the wings of an eagle, the most prominent animal that flies the highest and closest to the sun god. So he must be a powerful angel. When did she appear? December 12th, 1531, the solstice. I'm waiting for a head to turn. Wait, that's not the solstice. December 21st is. Exactly. We were still using the Julian calendar. We hadn't switched to the Gregorian calendar yet. That didn't happen until 1752. This was actually the shortest day of the year. It was still in the Julian calendar. And from this day, the days only got brighter. She appeared on the darkest day of the year. And from here, days will only get brighter. Juan Diego was a baptismal name, not his given name. His given name was Quatlatzoitzin, which meant eagle who speaks divine things. His name, his birth name itself, was enough to tell the Aztecs that this man speaks like the eagle, the most powerful animal who would have flown the highest to our sun god. And then we get to the science of it, because it wasn't only a cultural thing. Isabella, y'all grab a bag on the way out. That's for y'all. The science behind the tilma, I'm almost done, and then we'll finish up. So some of the things were very evident early on. It was a cultural thing. As soon as the Aztecs would have seen this, they would have known without a doubt that this was something we should embrace. Some things, though, would have not been apparent for several centuries because the technology did not yet exist to know some of the things about the tilma. Understand that this garment is made from an ayete fiber. I'm going to pass this around. You guys can feel what an ayete fiber feels like. And if you would just pass it around the room so everybody can get a feel of that. This thing would not have lasted more than about 20 to 30 years. This ayete fiber is made from an agave cactus. It was a poor man's cloth. He could have harvested the cactus himself, woven the cloth himself. He would have used it in the field to carry things and whatnot. And 450 years later, it still shows no sign of decay. It still shows that it's in perfect condition. It's not fading. It's not crumbling. It's not cracking. It's still in perfect condition. Nobel Peace Prize winner, Richard Kuhn. He was a biochemist. He was given a piece of the tilma to examine. First off, he said, okay, well, I know what it is. It's agave fiber. But what I don't know is, how did you guys get this thing to me? I did some study on this. It's from the 1500s. It shouldn't be here. It should have decayed. Yet it's still here. How did you guys do this? And then he said, and the pigment, the color that's on the tilma, that pigment should not be here either. That pigment, I don't know what it is. It's not chemical. It's not animal. It's not an element. It's not a burn mark. I have no idea what the color is. I have no idea why the color is there. It shouldn't be there. The cactus fiber that it's on shouldn't be there. November 14th, 1921, the Mexican government was trying to curtail Catholicism in Mexico. They sent one of the communist members into the basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe with a bouquet of flowers. And in that bouquet was a bomb. He asked if he could put that bouquet of flowers at the foot of the image. He said, of course, absolutely, please. And so he did. And then he left. Shortly thereafter, the bomb exploded. Every window in the basilica was blown out. Buildings all around the basilica, windows were blown out. The plaster on the altar in front of it was blown out. The crucifix was mangled. Picture on the far right, that's what the crucifix looks like today. And those are my two kids standing in front of it. The image itself was untouched. The glass pane, the single glass pane covering the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe did not crack, did not shatter, was in perfect condition. The bomb did no damage to the tilma or to the glass pane covering it. 1795, the gentleman is cleaning the frame of the tilma. He accidentally spilt nitric acid on it. That was the substance being used to clean the metal. When it touched the tilma, it should have dissolved that ayete fiber immediately. At this point, it was several hundred years old. It shouldn't even exist. But it did. And the nitric acid spilled on it, and it should have dissolved the tilma. It didn't. Today, all you see is that little stain in the upper right corner that I'm pointing to at the image on the far right. Okay. If you take the stars and you take the flowers on the mantle and on the robe of Mary, and you replace those with musical notes, and I'm going to see if this is going to play on here. The music that you've been hearing in the background is the music that's been playing from the tilma. So now you'll hear it a little bit louder for a moment. I'll let it play for a moment. But when you remove the stars, you remove the flowers, and in their place, you put the music staff and the notes. And the tilma plays a melody in perfect harmony. If you were to change the date, so these stars all align with December 12th, 1531. If you change the date, the stars change alignment, and it no longer plays music. At that point, it's discord. Only as the sky appeared on December 12th, 1531, does everything align to play a perfect harmony when you play the music on the tilma. And that is a 10-hour loop of music, so we will not be here for 10 hours, and I will move on. If you take all of the flowers, once again, the flowers were very similar to a pictogram for mountain. Okay, so remember the hieroglyphics. Okay, and if you were to take and change those flowers, which represented mountains, into mountains, and you lay the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe onto the map of Mexico, it matches up perfectly with the mountains of Mesoamerica, of middle Mexico. And notice once again that Mary is facing east, and that will be important in the next couple slides. So a gynecologist, a pregnancy doctor, Dr. Carlos Fernandez Castillo, examined the image. He looked at the different contours and concluded not only that Mary was definitely pregnant in the image, but that she was very pregnant. She was imminently pregnant and would probably give birth within the next couple weeks. Once again, December 12th, 1531, what is the next couple weeks? Christmas. the day we celebrate the birth of Christ. Some people will contradict this, others will swear by it. I will tell you that the vast majority of those that I have read about say also that the image tends to maintain a certain temperature. Regardless of the season, if they do a little scan of the image itself, it's right about 98.5 degrees. What is our human body temperature? 98.5 degrees, 98.6. April 24th, 2007, the Mexican legislature in the Zocalo, remember the Zocalo? Had the big Mexican flag in the middle. Well, the government building, the legislative building is right there to the side, and opposite that is the president's mansion, all there in the Zocalo. So the Mexican legislature was debating a bill to legalize, to decriminalize abortion in Mexico City. While they were debating the pros and cons of this, there was a mass being held a few miles away at the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The Mexican legislature ended up legalizing abortion in Mexico City. At the end of the mass, all who were present noted that the image began to glow just over the womb of Mary. The photo to the left is taken of the image from a distance, glowing in the center. The image to the right is an enlargement of the same. Notice that the image that was glowing resembles an unborn or developing child within the womb. They asked a lighting engineer to look at this, thinking somebody may have played a trick on them. So they brought in a lighting engineer, Luis Geralt, and that lighting engineer concluded that the light was not coming from behind, nobody was projecting it from behind the image, and there was no spotlight being shined onto the image. He concluded the only place this light could have been coming from was the image itself. Through time, we now know how to see the mistakes in masterpieces, works of art. If we do infrared photography, we can see all the times that the artist sketched, maybe with pencil or charcoal, before coloring all of the areas that he had sketched or she had sketched. And we use that to see what is the underdrawing behind the painting. We do that for all kinds of works of art. So we did that for Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we found that there was no underdrawing. There was no brush strokes. It was as if this image were placed with a single imprint. One stroke, that's it. This image is mathematically perfect. It follows Pythagorean's theorem. It uses the golden ratio of 1.618. If you're familiar with phi, most of you are probably familiar with pi, 3.14. That goes to infinity. Well, phi is another number that does the same. 1.618 goes to infinity. That's just abbreviated with the first three digits after the 1. They also found the Kepler's triangle in the middle of Napoli Olin, right over the womb. The entire image is mathematically perfect. If you look at the way that Mary's head is tilted, notice that she is in front of the sun, and her head is tilted at exactly 23.5 degrees against the sun behind her. The earth, too, tilts at exactly 23.5 degrees against the sun. If you look at the moon beneath her feet, we can use computer programs to go back and look at the phase of the moon on December 12th, 1531. Lo and behold, it's the first quarter, just like what she's standing on. Notice, too, that the moon is black. Well, when we look at the moon in the sky, it's not black, is it? Except during an eclipse. And the moon is in front of the sun, meaning that it is in eclipse. Everything about the image is perfect. Another thing that I will mention about this, I've talked several times about how Juan Diego would go to receive his catechism on the island of Tlatelolco. I also mentioned that Tlatelolco had been absorbed by the island of Tenochtitlan. They became one. But in the early days, prior to the islands expanding and becoming one, those who lived on Tlatelolco used to go out into the moonlight, and they would watch as the moon would rise over the horizon. That moon would rise just in the center of Tenochtitlan, so that they would call the island of Tenochtitlan Mexica. Why would they call it Mexica? Because that was the Nahuatl word for the belly of the moon, or the navel of the moon. So Mary too is standing on the belly of the moon. Now I told you that the reflection coming off of the waters of Lake Texcoco would reflect on the belly of the moon, the Mexica of the island of Tenochtitlan. Today, Mexica has been altered just a little bit to Mexica and now Mexico. So the nation of Mexico, named after the original city of Tenochtitlan, which was once called Mexica, the belly of the moon, where Mary walked. Coordinates. Mary appeared at Tepeyac Hill, which is precisely 19.5 degrees north. Coincidentally, there are 19 references to Mary in the Bible, and this is dead center between North and South America. Now, there are those who would contend that not only is she dead center, but that she is furthest north and furthest south. They speak of Our Lady of Guadalupe in northern Alaska and San Juan Diego in southern Argentina. I did my own research and found that to be a little bit of a stretch. Yes, in Healy, Alaska, there is an Our Lady of Guadalupe. I actually had the privilege of attending Mass there when I was in Alaska a few years ago. But there are Catholic churches further north in Fairbanks and beyond. To the south, in southern Argentina, there is a San Juan Diego. If I remember correctly, it was Jorge Bergoglio who started, if you will, who had instituted this church in Argentina. We know that Jorge Bergoglio goes on to become Pope Francis. But again, it is not the furthest south. It might be in southern Argentina, but there are more Catholic churches further south. So when there is a body of evidence, because again, I'm not an expert, but I did read a heck of a lot about this, and I try to present what the body of evidence was saying. This was one thing that I found not to be true, but I did find it interesting enough to at least mention to you. Now, if we look at the perfection, or I should say the imperfection of Mary's lips, okay? So if we look, and I'm pointing to the image to the right, and her lips almost look three-dimensional. They look like they're puffy. They've got fullness to the lips. How did the artist do this? He didn't. That is an imperfection in the ayete fiber. It's a knot that causes her lips to protrude, to look like they have fullness. There's no optical illusion to give it that effect. It's an actual imperfection in the ayete fiber. Now, you tell me an artist who could be so precise as to line up lips with an imperfection in the canvas upon which they are painting. If this doesn't show the image to be of divine origin, I don't know what will. Except maybe her eyes. Inside of her eyes, people began looking closer and closer, and as technology advanced, began looking with ophthalmoscopes and eventually with computer-driven imaging. Dr. Jorge Escalante Padilla, surgical ophthalmologist, he's an eye doctor, began examining the eyes of Mary. He noticed that the eyes were three-dimensional, even though they were on a tilma, a cactus fiber. The eyes look as if you're looking into a human eye. The space is 5/16 of an inch in width. It demonstrates what we know today as the Purkinje-Sanson effect. Dr. Jose Aste Tunsman, civil engineer, doctorate from Cornell, digital. You guys grab a barrel quite digital and expert in digital imaging. He found 13 images of people in both eyes of the tilma. Both eyes show the exact same people, but with slight variation because your eyes are not in the same place. It shows the left eye perspective and the right eye perspective. These are some of the folks he found on the inside. This would be Jose Juan Diego. You can see it with the background blacked out, and then with computer enhancement on the right, left eye and right eye, and an artist impression. Then you see the bishop and his translator. So that's one's America and one's Gonzalez. Close up, you see their faces with computer enhancement on the left and artist impression on the right. The native gentleman, far left. One thing interesting, you can see the sandal. You can see the strap of his sandal. And without magnification, now they magnified it 2,500 times. Without magnification, it's 4 microns wide, but you can see the strap of his sandal. That's how detailed this is. Even an artist today could not create an image with a strap of a sandal 4 microns wide. There's a family in the foreground who happened to be in the room during that final audience with the bishop. With computer enhancement, you see them a little more clearly, and an artist impression of the family. If you take both eyes, left eye and right eye, and you put them together, and then you, with computer imaging, remove the family in the foreground, you can see the shadow of Mary in their place. Mary was there, present in the room as the image appeared on the tilma of Juan Diego. Left eye and right eye, computer enhancement, and finally artist impression and a quick psalm. Wondrously show your steadfast love, O Savior, of those who seek refuge from their adversaries at your right hand. Keep me as the apple of your eye. Hide me in the shadow of your wings. Finally, we come to the stars themselves. If you look at the stars, they're not randomly placed. If you looked at the sky of Mexico City on the night of December 12th, or in the morning of December 12th, 1531, those stars align precisely with the constellations of the sky as seen over Mexico City. Now, it is on her mantle, and the mantle does not wrap completely around her. It's open in the front. But if you were to wrap her completely with the mantle, remember at the beginning, I said the woman clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. But where is that crown of 12 stars? Here it is. The corona borealis, the crown, would have appeared if that mantle stretched across her, right above her head. Over her heart, you would have found the constellation Virgo, the Virgin. Over her womb, Leah, the lion. Jesus Christ is known as the Lion of Judah. Notice too, remember when you put Mary down onto a map and you line up the flowers with the mountains of Mexico, face her east, and they line up perfectly. Look what direction Mary is facing with the constellations, facing east. There's a lot about this image that just goes beyond anything you could ever imagine. So when we talk about how this image has been able to convert so many people in so short a period of time, and even to this day continue to convert people, this is some of the reason why. You tell me, okay? Now, when you go out and you're looking at this and you're reflecting upon what we've seen and talked about tonight, you could look at this and say, man, that's just impossible. There's no way. There's absolutely no way this can't be real. And look, I experienced the same thing. When I was in the Holy Land, people were saying, you know what? That can't be real. It couldn't happen here. It could happen there or there. They don't really know. It takes faith. It takes faith that God gives to you through grace. If this is not real, how did it lead to the largest conversion in the history of mankind? 9 million people in 10 years. If this is not real, why then are there 13 masses celebrated at this basilica every single day? If this is not real, how do we get between 7 and 12 million people visiting over a 2-day span every year on December 11th and 12th at the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe? These are some of the most common Catholic shrines throughout the world. Vatican City, St. Peter's Basilica, Our Lady of Lourdes, Fatima, the grave of Padre Pio. Which one do you think gets more visitors than any other? Our Lady of Guadalupe. 20 million visitors every year, more than the Vatican, more than Lourdes, more than Padre Pio. Mexico City, Our Lady of Guadalupe. So, when you're feeling alone, when you're feeling lost, when your faith You may be doubting this, doubting that. You're at Mass and you're wondering, man, is that really the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist? When you're having doubts about your faith and things that in life, remember the words that Mary spoke to Juan Diego. Huitzamo mi kam, mi kamimanansen? Am I not here who am your mother? Okay, in closing, I have a brief video that's going to show you the shrine, about 3 minutes, and then we're going to conclude. Questions? Thank y'all for coming. This is it. This is the last of our classes. On your way out, please do grab like a little gift bag there. It's just something for me to say thank you for coming tonight. I kind of went